For too many decades, we have failed to plan decisively and invest in the infrastructure that our growing city needs. A statue of Robbie, Mayor Dove Meyer Robinson, stands on Queen Street just up the road here, defiantly shaking his fist at those who are too short-sighted and lacking in vision to make the decisions needed. His vision 50 years ago for a rapid transit network for Auckland would have made all the difference. Instead, Auckland's potential then was throttled by the incoming Muldoon government, resulting in congestion, loss of productivity, disconnection, urban sprawl, and the lack of transport choices that Aucklanders face today. We have to change that, and we will. Today we are picking up Mayor Robbie's legacy and taking the decisive steps necessary to future-proof Auckland. Today we're investing in the vision to build a high-capacity, linked-up rapid transit network across our city, one that improves our existing neighbourhoods, brings us closer to work and school, and enables new housing within the city. It's a vision that also reduces sprawl, emissions, and the fact that people often don't have any choice but to travel by car today. It starts with light rail from the city centre to Māngere, an area that will be home to 17% of Auckland's future population growth and 33% of job growth over the next 30 years. It also includes an alternative Waitematā Harbour crossing to deliver rapid transit to the North Shore and rapid transit to the North West. Importantly today, we confirm that work on these projects will be integrated and accelerated. Before moving on further, can I also acknowledge Denton's Kensington Swan and Pippa Gray for their generous hosting of today's event. In March of last year, I announced the creation of the Auckland Light Rail Unit to advance a 6-month programme of work on the city centre to Māngere corridor. The team has worked diligently in that time and have provided the government with advice about the best way to progress this project. I'd like to in particular thank the chair of the unit, Lee Orton, and the project director, Tommy Parker, for producing work of an exceptionally high quality in a constrained period of time with the complications of COVID. Equally important to the work that they have given to the government is the fact that the unit has engaged. They've talked to Aucklanders, mana whenua, communities and stakeholders to gain people's views and have an open and honest conversation about the trade-offs between the options that were on the table. I've also talked to countless numbers of Aucklanders over the last 9 months of the project to hear their views as we shape up the city shaping project. This engagement with the public has been critical because, as we know in the previous phase, the public often felt shut out of this project. I'm pleased that Aucklanders have come forward in large numbers to engage with the city shaping project. While there will always be a range of views about a project of this scale, there is clear support from the public and key stakeholders and a strong message: get on with it. To make sure that the public was a part of the process throughout, the Light Rail Unit released its report from Chair Lee Orton in October of last year, releasing a shortlist of the options along with their preferred recommendation. The shortlist included, firstly, light metro, a fully separated underground node, light rail, which is modern trams running on tracks embedded into the road, and thirdly, tunnelled light rail, a hybrid that will be partly tunnelled from Wynyard Quarter to Mt Roskill, with the balance running on the surface. This was the preferred option of the Light Rail Unit. The report generated excellent public conversation, and it certainly informed my thinking in advance of Cabinet's considerations on the issue. As the Minister of Finance indicated, Cabinet has met and now endorsed tunnel light rail for the city centre to Māngere corridor. Considering the various options and trade-offs, the benefits of tunnelled light rail are as follows. Firstly, it holds the optimal opportunity for high-capacity, future-proof transport that improves people's travel time and reliability of the network. It enables a more flexible alignment of the route and unlocks significant urban benefits within the corridor. Importantly, it sets the stage for future network integration, including a new harbour crossing and rapid transit to the northwest. It also avoids overwhelming Queen Street, which has had to deal with a lot of construction in recent years, and minimises the extent of construction disruption along the corridor. I do want to be very clear that myself and Cabinet gave serious consideration to all of the options. As I said before, the report was released in late last year. All of the options had credible cases and would deliver significant benefits to Auckland. And I do acknowledge that some people who followed this issue carefully had a clear preference for surface light rail. which clearly does have some benefits. I have become convinced, however, along with Cabinet, that we must have a truly future-proofed option with significant capacity to cater for future growth and to be able to accommodate a fully linked-up rapid transit network in the coming years. Tunnelling is required to provide the necessary frequencies and integration. Project modelling and international evidence tell us that patronage will grow strongly when this project is completed, and the material risk of surface light rail would be that capacity would be significantly stretched within 20 years of it being opened from a very significant investment. I am committed to strong ongoing engagement with the community to help ensure that tunnelled light rail is accessible to everyone in the community, as well-designed metro systems around the world are. And I'm also very pleased to confirm that as part of the way we take this project forward, we are committed to safe cycling and walking access along the corridor connecting into the stations. I'll just find my clicker here. On now to some of the key project details. Right up there? Yes, we do. The 24-kilometre route between the city centre and Māngere will include up to 18 stations along the route. It'll have the capacity to move up to 15,000 people per hour. That is the equivalent of approximately 14 lanes of private vehicle traffic being carried on this one line. It'll feature a reliable 32-minute travel time from the city centre to Māngere. This will shorten travel times for people right along the corridor. Trains will run every 5 minutes, so you can just turn up and go. From the north, light rail will start at Wynyard Quarter, travelling underground to Mt Roskill. Passengers will board the train at underground stations with provision for people with different mobility needs, including the elderly, people with prams or people with disabilities. In the city centre, we are today confirming that the line will travel via the University precinct, where there will be a station, connecting with the CRL at Aotea. In Eden Valley, light rail will likely intersect with the Western line at Kingsland, and in the Central Isthmus, the underground route is flexible and doesn't have to follow particular roads. So a little bit of further work will occur at the next stage to get the optimal location for those stations aligned with our urban development plans. From Mt Roskill, light rail will travel overland along State Highway 20 to Onehunga, across the Manukau Harbour, into the Māngere town centre and onto the airport. People will be able to board at surface level stops along the way. The earlier consultation put forward a station at Māngere town centre as an option. There was overwhelming community enthusiasm from the people of South Auckland for that to happen, and so I'm pleased to confirm that it will today. The introduction of light rail, and can I acknowledge those local government members who are in the room today who push strongly for that outcome for their communities. The introduction of light rail is particularly significant in South Auckland for communities who live there who have been underserved for transport options for too long and experience real transport poverty. High quality, frequent, reliable public transport will unlock jobs, education, housing, urban renewal and other opportunities for the South. And I look forward to working with the local community on this exciting part of the project. For you as an Auckland commuter, Auckland Light Rail will cut travel times by up to half. It will offer affordable and consistent services. As in other international centres, light rail services will run every 5 minutes, so you won't need to plan out your journey. You'll just turn up and go. It'll mean easier access to work and education, more vibrant and people-friendly town centres, cleaner air for you and your family, and more affordable housing options for you. But light rail is about, as the Minister of Finance said, more than just a transport project. It's a city-shaping opportunity. Our current population is 1.7 million people, and it's projected to reach 2 million in the early 2030s, just a decade from now. The 24 kilometres along the light rail corridor is vital to Auckland's future. It includes the country's largest business district, 2 universities, Eden Park, multiple town centres, manufacturing and commercial hubs, and Auckland International Airport. The overlay of light rail across this corridor will facilitate significant growth, housing intensification and urban uplift, both on the isthmus and in the south. When you add light rail investment to the other planning tools to promote sustainable growth, we could add up to 66,000 new homes to the corridor by 2051 and bring an additional 97,000 jobs into the area. Transit-oriented developments are specifically designed to create urban areas where people can live, work, shop and play and access services within walking distance, all in close range of reliable and convenient rapid transit services to connect to other parts of the city without a car. And that's a reality that we will be creating for hundreds of thousands of Aucklanders. This type of development is possible at multiple points along the corridor aligned to stations and will be an important part of the work we do at the next stage. This is a very important point. A quarter of Auckland's growth within its current boundaries can be accommodated along this corridor with the light rail investment we are announcing today. Today's announcement is important for the commitment to city centre to Māngere light rail, but just as importantly, it is about a firm government commitment to developing a fully integrated region-wide network. We've already made strong progress on the emergent network over the past 4 years, and I just want to demonstrate that now. The map that you see on the board in front of you shows the rapid transit network that we currently have, primarily made up of the Auckland Heavy Rail network and the North Shore Busway. We've also just recently opened connections between Auckland Airport and the Puhenui station, and the initial stage of the Eastern Busway between Panmure and Pakuranga. This map shows the network, including projects that are currently funded and underway, and Auckland Light Rail. That includes the busway between the city centre and Westgate, the CRL which is currently being constructed, stage 2 of the Eastern Busway between Panmure and Pakuranga, and the extension of rapid transit on the rail network between Papakura and Pukekohe. What you can see when you look at this map is that we're beginning to build up a London-style connected network. We have the CRL at the centre of the network like the heart. It doubles the capacity of the heavy rail network. And what you can visually see here is that the Auckland Light Rail line corridor is like the spine, a north-south axis that connects the network together and enables people to make integrated journeys around the city. This map shows the full proposed network, with lines to the North Shore and the North West included. A city like Auckland should already have a true linked-up system like this, and now is the time to get on with the job. A tunnel through the city centre future-proofs the network for this expansion, and it means that light rail can be extended to the North Shore and North West without having to transfer from one line to another. It's about making it work for the people who use the network. City centre to Māngere passenger demand is expected to increase by 20 to 30% when North Shore and North West lines are connected, because people will use the network to make journeys around the city. A city centre tunnel will be required when the successful North Shore busway runs out of capacity, which will be as soon as the early 2030s potentially. Tunnelled light rail gives flexibility for a new tunnel or bridge across the harbour in the future. Today we are confirming that we've instructed officials to begin work on integrating these two critical projects and also to accelerate work on the next stage of developing rapid transit to the northwest. Consultation on options for a public transport-centred alternative Waitematā Harbour crossing will commence later this year, and decisions on the preferred option will be made next year. The light rail team will work closely with the alternative Waitematā Harbour crossing connections team and the Auckland Rapid Transit team to bring these projects together over the coming months. Based on the investigations undertaken by the Light Rail Group, we know that a significant investment is required to bring this reality to fruition. Given the scale of capital and operating costs, a combination of different funding sources will be required. As the Minister of Finance indicated, a mixture of Crown, working with local government, but also bringing value capture into the picture. It is fair and equitable that those who potentially receive a private financial windfall from the significant public investment make a contribution to the project, and we're clearly signalling that that will happen and that that is a live prospect from today. We will consult carefully in the next stage on the value capture scheme to make sure that it is fair and equitable. It is clear that a large Crown contribution is required, as I said. I'll be working closely with the Minister of Finance in the coming months on this issue, both in terms of the funding for this project, but also for ensuring that there is a rational, consistent and equitable approach to the funding of rapid transit across different projects and also different cities. A project of this size and scope will not come without disruption for Aucklanders. The building of light rail from the city centre to Māngere will require construction in heavily populated areas. The option we have selected is tunnel-based through that part of the corridor, which will reduce surface impacts in the city centre and the central isthmus. In the south, the general alignment along the motorway will also reduce disruption. A business mitigation approach has been identified in the IBC for light rail, and it is the government's intention to provide a comprehensive support package for businesses from the outset of construction. I want to thank the Dominion Road Business Association for their engagement and advocacy on this issue, and confirm that we will continue to work with them and other key stakeholders on the exact design of the support package in the next phase of work. The next phase of the project is detailed planning and consenting. This includes refining the route and costs and finalising delivery and funding arrangements. It is anticipated that the full planning and consenting stage will take approximately 3 years, and construction 6 to 8 years. Large projects like this in existing urban areas do take time to complete. We do, however, expect early stage consenting to commence and early works to commence in 2023. Light rail will be the biggest transport project in New Zealand's modern history and presents significant opportunities for the private sector. The project marks the start of a broader program of investment in mass rapid transit, beginning a pipeline of citywide mass rapid transit work over the coming 20 years, offering industry the opportunity to start planning forward their workload. To that point, robust industry engagement will become a priority in 2022. We're also establishing the Auckland Light Rail program and the broader rapid transit program as a thriving infrastructure, zero harm project that puts the well-being of the people and workers involved in the project at the centre. This is following the example of the Zero Fatality 2012 London Olympic Games program. We'll work carefully with key stakeholders including unions, the Business Leaders Health and Safety Forum, WorkSafe and the construction sector to embed this approach from the outset. Community and stakeholder engagement is integral to the ongoing planning phases and will help shape future decisions such as the location and design of stations, integration with other transport modes and urban outcomes. Community input will be imperative to both the construction and operational phases of the project, and to ensure the delivery is carried out reflecting the interests of the community, local residents, businesses and mana whenua. I'd like to thank the Auckland Light Rail Group for their contribution to date. The team is a true collaboration across central government, local government, mana whenua and community. Finally, I would like to return to the why. Auckland is a great city. It is home to more than 1/3 of Aucklanders, and that's growing. There is so much to be proud of in Tamaki Makaurau, but we have been let down by a failure of political leadership in the past to make these necessary investments. Mayor Robbie is not with us today, but the legacy of his vision is. And it's also there in the vast majority of Aucklanders who tell us time and again they want a city that is less congested, that has cleaner air, more affordable housing, and communities better connected to education, jobs and opportunities. Today's announcement is about future-proofing Tamaki Makaurau, making life better for the people who live here today and the generations to come. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, and I welcome forward now the Mayor of Auckland, Phil Goff, for some comments.
Kia ora tātou, tēnei te mihi nui ki a koutou, no mai haere mai. Good morning, and can I welcome as many people as we can fit into this room within existing health restrictions. There'd be many more if that was not the case. Can I first of all acknowledge Minister of Finance and Minister of Infrastructure and Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson, Transport Minister Michael Wood, Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore, and the councillors that are here, our local body chairs and members who are here, and our members of Parliament, to mana whenua, ngā rimu, tēnā koe, and to transport leaders from across the city who have contributed really in a critical way to the work of the Light Rail Establishment Unit. And if I can just single out from that unit both Leah Orton and Tommy Parker for a job that they did under real pressure, but a job that they did incredibly thoroughly, comprehensively, working in close consultation with council, with local boards, and with the wider community. Today's announcement, I think, is the most important transport project that any government has embarked on for the future of our city. It's fantastic, and I genuinely and warmly want to thank the government for a contribution to the cost of that investment that I know from my past experience would have been eye-watering for the Minister, but one which shows foresight and understands what is needed to unlock the potential of the city. Without that, we would have no way of addressing the three problems that are the biggest problems that our city faces. One is congestion. The second is transport emissions, 40% of our total carbon emissions. And the third is the need for intensification of housing in a high-quality compact form. Those are the three pressing concerns of our city that cannot be adequately addressed unless we have a joined-up transport system of which light rail is a critical and integral part. This is transformational. It will impact on our city's development, not simply for the next decade, but for the next half century. It is the largest transport infrastructure project undertaken in this country, and it's the biggest investment in much needed transport infrastructure that has ever been made. That is the significance of the announcement that we are hearing today. And clearly, that was a decision that was not taken lightly, and I acknowledge immediately that only central government has the resources that would enable us to unlock the key to meeting the challenges that this city faces. And this is a critical contribution to our city. It of course provides, as you've heard, a fast and high capacity public transport link between the city centre and Māngere, which are the city's two biggest and fastest growing employment centres. But it's much, much more than this. It addresses the need for the city to have a properly integrated and future-proofed public transport system. The project enables there to be a link with a future rapid transit system to the northwest, which is a fast-growing area, and it enables a third harbour crossing that makes sense. I heard some criticism of this proposal from Parliament, and it was around we need the third harbour crossing much more, and the implication of that was that it would be a car third harbour crossing. I've got to say that would be a disaster for our city. The problem is not crossing the harbour, it's the congestion that you face when you get here. We don't need more cars trying to compete for limited road space and no parking in the city. We need a link for a public transit system that will take people from the shore to the south, to the northwest, and ultimately to the east. What this system also does, linking the city centre and Māngere, is opens up a network that will go from Māngere and the airport to Botany, joining up with the Eastern Busway that the first section has already been opened in the last couple of weeks. Thank you for that, Michael. And it in fact creates a network that will serve the whole of the city. I can't say strongly enough that without such a network, the continued population growth in this city will result in a city that will become gridlocked and unlivable. That's why this is so critical. Already we face huge productivity costs. You know, sometimes we don't look at both sides of the ledger. Yes, there's a huge investment going into this, but what is the cost? I think you touched on it, Minister, of not doing it. It's already calculated that we're spending $1.3 billion, or we're losing $1.3 billion a year because of congestion in our city. I think that's a conservative estimate, and it's a figure that will only grow over time. Billions and billions of dollars will be lost to our city and our nation if we continue to have gridlock and we don't have a joined up rapid transit public system. So the other side of the ledger is this a big investment? Yes. What is the cost of not doing that investment? It's continuing to tip money down the drain because of congestion and lost productivity. For 60 years, this city has seen ongoing population growth, which has accelerated in recent decades, which has not been matched by a corresponding investment in our transport infrastructure. And the shortfall in the investment that has been made has seen a failure to future-proof that infrastructure that has been provided. You only have to look just over the harbour here at a thing called the Harbour Bridge. Built in 1959, within 10 years it had to be doubled in size at considerable extra cost. That's the mistake we've made time and again in the past in Auckland. Future-proofing means that we will not be making that same mistake again. And I also want to refer to one of my predecessors, Mayor Sir Dovemeyer Robinson, Robbie's rapid transit system. Yeah, I think, Michael, he is shaking his fist at the frustration of the short-sightedness of the politicians in Wellington and in Auckland at the time that did not see the need for this city to have a public transport system that worked as it grew in size. And 50 years later, sadly too late to prevent the congestion that's already occurred, this project will finally see the realisation of Robbie's dream. Now, I've also heard the criticism that this could be done more cheaply. It could be. It was tempting to the Minister of Finance, I'm sure, but not to future-proof the needs of the city for a lasting and sustainable transport system would again be short-sighted. This project is critical to the mode shift that we need from people relying on their private motor vehicles and being willing to transfer to a public transport system that is reliable, that is quick, that is accessible, and that is sustainable. This is the only way we will solve the problems of Auckland's congestion. This is the only way that we will achieve the targets that we have set to reduce our carbon emissions, 40% of which come from our transport system. Finally, this project, of course, is more than simply providing an effective pollution-free and sustainable transport network. If it was that alone, it would still be worthwhile. It would be a great return for all of us living in this city. But just as significantly, it enables us to address the third big challenge the city faces, which is around housing the people that are coming to live in this city. And the way that we will do that is by creating a quality, compact, urban design form with intensification of housing. The city centre to Māngere light rail will enable development of housing, 66,000 additional houses, housing 200,000 people, which will meet over a quarter of the city's projected housing needs. Not only will it provide for that housing, but it will also mean that the people that live there will have connections to their work, to their study, the universities that are on this network, to our hospital system, and to the other services that they will need. The investment is significant, but it's not a net cost. If we weren't to allow brownfields development of intensive housing, we would have to provide hugely expensive infrastructure to continue the urban sprawl of the city in greenfield developments. That's already expensive. We're spending billions of dollars in Drury providing that infrastructure. So this is not a net cost. By providing compact, high-quality housing within the city, we obviate the need for expensive infrastructure to continue to have the sprawl of our city, including to the south on valuable agricultural land. I want to warmly thank the government for its commitment to this project and to Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. This is a project that will be transformational for Auckland, that will enable our city to be world-class and highly livable, but it's also transformational for the nation, because for the nation to succeed, the place where 30% of its people, 33% of its people live, and 38% of its production comes from, it needs to work. And this project is essential to that objective. Thank you very much.
Looking at me.
And I will just simply close our session today. Ka mihi au ki ngā kōrero katoa, anga minita me te koromatua o te rā ki a tātou katoa, a tēnā koutou he karakia hei whakakapi, a tēnei huihuinga. Nō reira, unuhia atu rā te pūtake o ngā kōrero o te wānanga, unuhia te hautapu ariki. Ka whakiria e rongo, kia paitara āwhare, ka whakamaua, kia tina, huie, tāiki. Tēnā tātou katoa.
There's no minister. There's not even Minister Wood is as short as me. Is everyone all good?
Are we all happy with placement of this in the shot? Cool. Yeah, as long as this is in the shot, I'm happy. Absolutely.
Just letting everyone know that Mayor Goff is available after us for anyone who wants to ask him any questions, but otherwise fire away. Michael and I will take him. Well, you've seen in the establishment unit's work that they've estimated a cost of around $14 billion for this. Obviously, as we go through the process of the final design, consenting, final costs will become available. But I think it's really important to remember that those costs are spread over a number of years, and as we indicated in there today, there are a number of sources of funding. Clearly, central government is going to have to step up and make a significant investment here, but there are other ways that we can support that.
It's not a value capture. What are you saying to the residents of Mount Roskill?
Well, it's more to, not only the residents and future residents, but business owners as well. When we have public transport projects like this all over the world, there is a significant benefit to those who have their businesses around stations or who are able to have developments that take place there. This is no different than what has been done in many other places in the world. It's usually done through some kind of annual charge or targeted rate or something of that description. We'll work carefully through that, consult those in the community, but it is only right, as Minister Wood said when he spoke, that those who will benefit significantly from this will contribute to it.
So if you own a property in the area, you're going to pay for it?
No, and we're not going to make that blanket kind of statement today. Value capture schemes can be designed in a number of different ways, focusing on businesses, focusing on new developments. We'll carefully design those, we'll consult with the community, but I think everybody would understand that where there is a significant private benefit like this, some form of contribution would be appropriate. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the government will need to be the main investor here, and we need to make a commitment not to allow infrastructure deficits to grow again. These are very sizable numbers. As I said when I stood up there, as the Minister of Finance, I took a look at that report and I could easily have just said to Minister Wood, sorry, we're only going to go for the cheaper option. New Zealand's done that for far too long, and that's what's left us with the infrastructure deficit we've got.
Katie, if I can just add to that, I think it's a fair and appropriate thing to clearly send that signal today so that people can make decisions knowing that that is the government's intention. I don't think that anyone would think it would be fair that with such significant public investment going into this project that some people might swoop up land and make windfall gains off the back of that public investment. So we want to send that signal, and we'll then work very carefully with people to make sure it's fair and equitable.
This is a subversion of a capital gains tax. If you own property and you value on it, you're going to tax and you're going to pay for it.
No, it isn't. I mean, it's not a capital gains tax is a comprehensive, applies to everybody's situation. The whole point of value capture regimes is you look closely at where the benefits are being gained in a very specific set of circumstances. But to endorse what Minister Wood said, this is what I think most New Zealanders would expect. We're not looking to be able to support people to make those kinds of windfall gains. We want them to share in both the benefits but also the costs. But let's not pretend here. Central government will carry most of the burden of this project, and that is something that will have to be spread over a number of years, but it's the right thing to do. Amelia. Amelia will take a minute.
It's not going to cost $14 billion though, is it? With the skyrocketing construction costs, it's going to be a massive cost.
Well, Amelia, just to give a little bit of context there, that the 2021 dollar cost estimate that the unit has provided is approximately $10 to $11 billion. The inflated costs, which takes into account how costs might rise over the period of construction, is approximately $14 billion. That's been through a Treasury gateway process. It's been rigorously reviewed. There's obviously a lot of further work that needs to be done at a detailed design stage, but we're very confident that that's a robust figure for us to signal today.
And there's no real time frames in the plan announced today. When can you give a commitment on when shovels are going to be in the ground and when forklifts are used?
As I indicated in my comments, we're moving forward with real pace on this. A large urban renewal project like this in Auckland or anywhere else will take a number of years. But but I've indicated clearly that we expect a consenting process to begin next year, that is 2023, and for early works to also begin in 2023.
And so when can an order get help of this at the airport and get it to the city centre?
Well, again, what we have clearly indicated is that following the detailed design and consenting, construction estimates are for approximately 6 to 8 years. So an end time for the project of approximately 2030 to 2031. We will also investigate at the next stage whether there are options for phasing and bringing forward some of those estimates. But that's a high level estimate, and we want to be realistic and clear with people. And I think people understand you can't build a city shaping project like this through an existing city, through a tunnelled approach, super quickly. But we get big benefits at the end.
And this is certainly not the first time Labour has announced light rail in Auckland. How many more times are you going to announce that Auckland is going to get light rail?
I think everyone will be clear that during the last government, the parties that made up their government weren't able to agree. That's something that's obvious to everybody. But as the government we are today, Mr Wood as the Minister of Transport has taken this process through. The establishment unit's done something really important over the last year or so, which is really engage with the community so that we understand where all stakeholders are. We now have a very clear plan. We have a strong commitment to integrate this with other parts of the transport network. So we are getting on with the job, and I'm confident that the dates and the numbers that Minister Woods talked about today will come to fruition. Bernard.
Minister, who will set and collect any target rate? Will it be the government or Auckland Council?
That's exactly the design process that needs to now take place. Value capture regimes differ around the world. Sometimes they are run by local government, sometimes they are run by central government, or indeed the elements of central government that might be in charge of a project. That's the design process we're going through. But the point that Minister Woods made is we think it's only fair to people to have a clear understanding that if they are involved in this project, if they own property around it, that this is one of the ways that we will be funding it.
Do you think it's fair that Auckland ratepayers should this project in one way or another?
Well, certainly our partners here are the Auckland Council, and we'll be working closely with them around the way in which we fund this. We have a standing partnership for transport in Auckland through ATAP, and that is a $31 billion project, sorry, I wish it was million, $31 billion project that we are working on together. There are a number of other parts of the housing program that we're also doing together. So I think you've got to see it in a total round as to the way in which we will partner. There will be ongoing conversations between central and local government.
And do you plan to stage or build some of these rapid transit projects together? For example, are you going to wait until you build light rail before you do a second harbour crossing?
That integration work will occur at the next stage. So as the Minister of Finance said earlier, the projects are currently at slightly different stages. We've completed the indicative business case for City Centre to Māngere, and we're moving on to a detailed business case. The alternative Waitematā Harbour crossing is in the indicative business case stage. We'll be doing work over the coming months on how we bring those together to deliver the benefits in a rational way, to get efficiencies out of the approach, and to make sure that the projects are integrated in a way that's going to lead to the best outcome. So a bit of further work to work out how we best tie them together and best deliver them. But that is the clear intention.
Could you talk through the reasons you've chosen the tunnel option? The establishment unit suggested that all three options, including surface, would be future-proof. Said that would be years of life. You suggested today that we would only have had 20 years of life. Explain the thinking.
Bernard, Simon, there are. I mean, you're just so alike. there are two key reasons, as we indicated, for why we have made this decision and that have elevated this decision beyond the surface light rail option. The first does relate to that future-proofing and capacity, because while the unit did say that all of the options were credible and delivered significant benefits and all had large capacity, that is true. The unit in its modelling was also very clear that the tunnelled options had significantly more capacity than the surface light rail option, approximately 10 million more annual patronage by around about 2050, 2060 if we go tunnelled rather than surface light rail. It also weighs very heavily on my mind that whenever we talk to international experts, and we did that as a part of this process, what they always tell us is that when mass rapid transit of this kind opens, the numbers will grow more than you anticipate they will. And I think it would be a fundamental mistake if, as Mayor Goff said, like the Auckland Harbour Bridge, we built something that didn't have the capacity to see us through. But the second key point is the integration one, and that I think probably is the new thing that you might be hearing today, is that this isn't just about one project from the city centre to Māngere, it's about a linked up mass rapid transit network for Auckland. And that North Shore line, the modelling says, will bring an extra 30% capacity onto the city centre to Māngere line. So we need to be prepared for a network that can deal with that in the future. You have to go underground, particularly through the city centre, if you want to be able to achieve that.
And Simon, just to make the point, if it isn't already obvious, that Cabinet had a robust discussion around the options, and we worked through the process that Minister Woods just outlined. And for me, as the Minister of Finance, the most significant point was the final one around the network and the understanding that, yes, the harbour crossing is vital. Yes, the work out west, out north, out east, all of that has to connect together. And in the end, there was no other decision, to be frank. If we had taken one of those other options, we would have been selling that network short and repeating all of the mistakes that we've said today we don't want to do.
Nevertheless, given the amount of money involved, the decision effectively means that the network gets delayed. The Northwest line will be delayed, the line from Boston to Manukau will be delayed.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, Simon. It depends how we just choose to fund it. It depends how we choose to phase different parts of this project as well. But again, we have to see it as a full network that, yes, it will take time, but it will deliver the outcomes we want.
I just need to respond further. I would very much to the contrary say that is not the case, Simon. The North West Busway is proceeding at the moment. As a part of today's announcement, I'm confirming that we've actually instructed officials to accelerate further planning around the further northwest connection to Huapai and Kumu. So quite to the contrary, we are bringing forward the timelines as well as the timeline and planning for the alternative Waitematā Harbour crossing. It's not going backwards, it's coming forward.
Given the construction we've seen businesses in the CRL, how big will that business support package be? What will it cover?
I think we understand that if we had our time over again, we would have done things differently in terms of the CRL and business disruption. So we want to take the lessons from that, get in front of it, and sit down with those businesses to work through part of their views and how we do phase the projects. How significant, I can't give you a dollar figure today, Katie, but I can say for sure that we understand that we need to take those businesses, those communities with us, and part of that is working out the appropriate financial response to that.
And will you help those businesses that are suffering and some of them closed down, especially in the city?
Well, one of the things that we can do differently by planning this from the beginning and working with businesses before constructions begin is actually have a wider range of options for the businesses that we're working with. For some of them, the answer might be to look at relocating to a different location where they don't have to deal with the construction disruption. Some of them might want to see it out. Some of them will have good ideas about how we can keep things going during construction. So instead of dealing with the pain after the event, as has happened with CRL, we can get in before and work with those businesses.
And why Sandringham Road rather than Dominion Road?
An important clarification on this point. The establishment unit recommended a Sandringham road alignment coupled with the tunnelled light rail option. The decision we have made leaves a bit more flexibility in terms of how we take that forward. So we have confirmed stops at the university, probably a connection into Kingsland because that creates a connection with the northwest line and enables people to make joined up journeys. Between there and Mt Roskill, we haven't locked down Sandringham Road. We've said we want to do a bit of further work on the best alignment, which is we will work closely with Minister Megan Woods and Kāinga Ora about housing developments along the corridor to get the stations in the right places and get the best benefits. Bear in mind that one of the benefits of tunnelling rather than surface is we're not bound by a single straight line road corridor. We can actually move the tunnel to the best places to get the best benefits.
Could it be underneath, you could be under viewing between sectors?
Well, potentially, but that's the work that we need to do. And as everyone said here up on the stage, this is an integrated transport and housing project. So we need to bring those together. Looking at in the Mt Roskill Kāinga Ora development, we're talking about 10,000 new houses, 25 to 30,000 new residents moving into that area. Let's make sure we align the housing and transport outcomes as best as we can. That is what we'll do next to nail that and get it right.
How many houses might have been demolished for this to happen?
The estimates from the establishment unit is that approximately 160 to 170 properties will be affected in total by the tunnelled light rail option that we have chosen. Now, affected doesn't mean that those properties will necessarily be removed in their entirety. Some of them we might have to talk with the owners and nip off a corner there, here or there, or whatever. So it's a smaller number than we would have had with the surface option, which is more around 500 houses in total. And obviously we'll be working really carefully and respectfully with those homeowners as we take the project forward.
Well, as I said earlier on, there are a range of options for us. But I think one of the things that if central government is serious about this kind of nation and city building project, then we do have to have a slightly different conversation in New Zealand about public debt. Our levels of public debt are extremely low, and as the Minister of Finance, I've worked very hard to make sure that's happened. But if we are denying ourselves the infrastructure we need to create livable cities, to create more productive cities, then we're doing the wrong thing by future generations. So yes, inevitably there will be some more borrowing associated with this project over a very long period of time. But it's that kind of sensible borrowing to future-proof a city that I think everybody should get behind.
Well, why can't you give a number? Why just some more? Why not?
Because as we said before, we're still looking at the breakdown of things like value capture and other ways that we might be able to find support for this project. But as I've said, we recognise the government will take on the lion's share of this investment, and we will do that not only through the revenue that we raise via petrol tax, as you say, and through the National Land Transport Fund, but also by looking at how we genuinely look after future generations. You know, I'm obliged under the Public Finance Act to keep a prudent level of debt. To me, a prudent level of debt is not only the number, it's also what does that mean for infrastructure? What does that mean for housing? Is it really prudent to leave 30, 40-year infrastructure deficits, as has been done in the past? I don't believe that it is, and therefore we will borrow sensibly for long-term investments that have a great return.
Given rising construction costs and labour shortages, how difficult is it going to be for us to stick to around that $14 billion mark? How realistic do you need to be about both time frame and cost as well?
So as Minister Wood's already said, there's already been a factor into the $14 billion cost for inflation and the cost escalations that we've seen. Also, obviously, when we look at the construction timeline of this project, we will be through the COVID period and we'll be into a period where labour force constraints perhaps won't be as great as they were. But equally, we do have to understand that these are projects that around the world people are doing in terms of light rail. We do have to be competitive in that. It's one of the reasons that we want to get prepared and get into it now. But this is not something that will be happening in the next year in terms of that construction, and so therefore those immediate inflation-related issues and supply constraint issues are not as great.
Katie, the other thing I would just say there is that one of the benefits of the approach we are talking about, which is looking at a program of work over a 20-year period, is that we actually have the ability to gear up our infrastructure and construction sector, train the workers that we need, be able to more domestically source some of the high-level expertise that we currently have to fly in from all around the world to do projects like the CRL. What the infrastructure sector tells us is that because these projects have historically been so lumpy, it's been difficult to build up the expertise and all of the capacity here in New Zealand. This program that we're talking about, combined with the program around the country, means that I think we'll actually be able to deal with that much better and much more efficiently.
Right. We'll take Amelia and then we'll get Minister Mayor Golfin.
What will say to all of those New Zealanders who just think we're going into a lot more debt to pay for it?
What I'd say to all New Zealanders is that if we can get Auckland moving, more productive, more sustainable, that benefits them. But also we have a massive program of transport and infrastructure investment right around New Zealand. We've put more money into sectors like transport and housing than we've ever seen governments do before. So everybody benefits from this. In terms of the debt, don't overstate it. It's spread over a long period of time, but it is important that we take a realistic approach and give people certainty in investment. So that's what New Zealanders will get from this, a more productive big city here in Auckland, but better investment right around New Zealand as well. All right, we'll hand over to Phil. Thanks, everybody.
Good. Yeah. If there's any councillors that want to come up here, Deputy Mayor, I think you should be up here. Councillor Hills, Margie. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm aware you've just done a marathon session and you've asked all the hard questions to the government, and I'm very grateful for that. But I'm just available here today if there's any questions that you'd like to ask from an Auckland Council's perspective.
How much do you think Auckland Council should be putting into this?
Well, what Auckland Council would be taking responsibility for is a share in the infrastructure costs around the new light rail development. So currently for projects of national significance, the government meets the cost of that, say a motorway, to use an old-fashioned example of that, and we would provide the connecting routes, or they may provide rail, and we would meet the cost of the station. So Auckland Council would make a contribution, but the core cost of the light rail system is a project of national significance that can only be met by government itself.
What do you think about this idea of value capture? How do you think now that residents
Well,
about having to pay for this?
if I look at it from the viewpoint of being both a ratepayer and a taxpayer, if I'm contributing to the development of really valuable infrastructure and somebody else is making a windfall profit out of that infrastructure, I'd expect them to contribute their share to it. So I absolutely support the concept of value capture. The challenge will be to find a way in which it can be done fairly, equitably. People with the expertise in that will measure up both alternative options, but the likelihood, I think, is tough.
This is going to be extremely extensive. How would you sell this project to someone living in Gore in the South Island who says, I'm not going to benefit from this at all, why am I paying for it?
Because that assumption is absolutely incorrect. When there's a productivity loss of billions of dollars a year from Auckland, that is not a loss to Auckland, that is a loss to the productivity, the GDP of the country as a whole. Lost taxation, lost revenue, greater costs that go on to consumer goods that come into Auckland but are distributed around the country. So the benefit of this project is first and foremost to Auckland, but it also hugely benefits the rest of the country. This is where a third of the population lives, but nearly 40% of the GDP occurs. And if we don't get Auckland right, that will be a massive burden on the country as a whole.
This project has been kicking around for years and years and years and years and years. Auckland is just sick of this now?
Well, I welcome the fact that for the first time I've heard a minister and a cabinet collectively commit to what the city actually needs. This is the biggest thing that has ever happened to Auckland. For literally decades, central government and to some extent local government has come up with short-term solutions to what are long-term problems. And they've failed. They've failed, and you can see that, and every Aucklander can see that in the congestion that they face every day. They can see that in the carbon emissions that we're pouring out into the atmosphere. Those are critical problems, as is the housing shortage problem. They can only be effectively addressed by transformational change. And what the government has committed to today is transformational change, and the money needed to pay for that. And that is really welcome to me as an Aucklander, as well as the Mayor of our city.
If there's a change in body politics or a change in government over the next couple of years, are you confident this is even going to go ahead?
Yeah, I met with representatives from the National Party earlier this week, and I made it clear to them that by the time this project is finished, we may have had 2 changes in government. And the last thing this country needs is short-term politicking because, it looks like a good idea that you're opposed to something the other side is doing. I saw 4 parties in Parliament come together around a congestion tax. Not going to be popular, but absolutely necessary. But to do credit to Parliament, the four parties looked at the facts and they came to the agreement that this is something that we needed to deal with the congestion problem in Auckland. And I hope that those parties can do the same thing in terms of light rail. This is a project that spans different terms of government, and we desperately need the parties to look at the long-term needs and the long-term commitment rather than the short-term politicking, and I hope that happens.
When do you expect to be finished?
My guess is that this is going to take over a decade. It will take a long time, but when we made the decision to put through the Waterview Tunnel in 2008, we didn't open it until 2018. Big infrastructure projects always take time, but they never happen if you never start them. And you never start them if you don't have a financial commitment to it. So what we can celebrate today is that we have heard the financial commitment and we have heard the commitment to starting it. And that's great for our city.
Do you see this as a legacy for your retirement?
I see this as a legacy that will benefit future generations of Aucklanders. I hope that, when I'm in my wheelchair in my 90s, I'll be able to take advantage of this. But I know for sure that my kids and my grandchildren will be able to. And that's what counts for me.
You made a decision about running again?
I'll make a decision within the next few weeks, and you guys will be the first to know. Well, not quite the first, almost the first. There's a thing called a wife and a council, and but I'm seriously considering the options.
I think one of the really key points about this project, and Ed touched on it in his address, is that this is a network of abilities to move people around various parts of geographical Auckland. And Auckland's not like many parts of the world where it's flat and it's expansive. You just keep putting ring roads and Beijing's where the case. Auckland's got geographical challenges and harbours and mountain ranges. But building this network is going to take time. What we've lacked in the past is that 30-year vision. We have now, through ATAP and through the formation of the new Auckland Council and Auckland Transport itself and NZTA, developed a joint 30-year plan. Now we just need to get the guaranteed funding around it to deliver it. And that will create contracts of scale that will enable us to compete on an international scale for attraction, international finance and international people to do these works. We have been too long in this country doing one bridge or one rail bit or one bit of roading after another. There's been no continuous 30-year plan to deliver contracts and infrastructure over 30 years. This is a really good start for that.
Thank you, Bill.